Hi, I'm Dr. Rob Franklin, equine veterinarian and co-founder at FullBucket. Thanks for joining us on the FullBucket YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about foaling season. It's that time of year. It's something that many of us look forward to every year. Those of you that have foaled out a ton of mares in the past, this is somewhat routine, but the novelty never wears off. And many of you, this is the first time and you're out looking for information on making sure your foal gets off to a good start. This is the most important week of the foal's life. Remember that we've spent oftentimes over 12 months of time preparing here. We've matched the mare with its sire. We've allowed the breeding to take place. We've confirmed the pregnancy with ultrasound. We've transitioned the mare's nutrition plan during the last trimester. We've spent 11 months of gestation preparing for this foal, and now it's almost here. So making sure that foal gets off to a good start is critical. Remember, during that first week, this is when the foals go to the intensive care unit and they're fighting for their life if they don't get off to a good start. And even those that survive can be predisposed to some conditions that can really limit their ability to perform as athletes. So a great first week is just paramount to a great rest of the foal's life. And why is that important? It's important because the foal's immune system and the microbiome, or the intestinal milieu of bacteria and microbes that are going to naturally help that foal digest its food and fight off pathogens or bad bacteria, that's not developed yet. And so we need to have several steps that we need to take to make sure that that foal does have a healthy immune system and get that gut microbiome off to a good start. In this video, I'm going to talk about the signs of a healthy foal, early health risks, and how to ensure your foal's health long-term during those important first few weeks of his or her life. So let's talk about what a healthy foal looks like during the first 12 to 24 hours. Remember the rule 1, 2, 3 that we've talked about in other episodes. Now, the mare should foal very quickly. Once her water breaks, we're typically looking for that foal to come out within 15 to 20 minutes. Any delay in that foal coming out should immediately alert you to contact your veterinarian. Unlike other large animal species such as cattle, horses don't have a long time to live once that water's broken. Okay, so if you see the water break, you need to see the foal presenting itself with the nose and 2 front feet, and that process needs to be continuing, the birthing process, without it stalling, and needs to be completed within 15 minutes. Okay, if you see one leg, or you see no nose, or perhaps you see upside down feet, which may indicate the back legs are trying to come out, then those are all signs you need to contact your veterinarian immediately. You cannot wait around and see if things will straighten out. Now, oftentimes that mare will be getting up and down. She may be adjusting herself during the birthing process, but no matter what's happening, the process should be happening progressively. There shouldn't be a long period of stall. Okay, so the foal's out, that's great. You may want to remove any of the placenta or amnion that could be covering the foal's face or nostrils, and to make sure it can breathe. But after that, I tend to like to step away and let the mare and foal bond. Okay, the umbilical cord should have naturally separated. If it hasn't, then you can break it. There's a natural sort of stricture that's a couple of inches away from the belly button or the umbilicus where you can tear that. It's nice to have an umbilical clamp on hand. You can order those from ARS, Animal Reproduction Supply, and they have a little plastic clamp you can put right on that umbilicus should it be leaking blood. Normally when it breaks on its own, the vessels constrict and you don't get any blood loss, but that's something for you to check immediately. But again, step back, let that mare and foal have the ability to bond as long as the foal's nursing and are breathing without any trouble. Now, should the foal be perhaps struggling to breathe a little bit or not sitting upright, then you can take a towel. The first thing you want to do is just really vigorously dry that foal off. That will help stimulate the foal. You'll see the mare will do that with her own tongue. She'll lick the foal vigorously. But you can replicate that with a towel should the foal be looking a little lethargic and not be breathing as rapidly as possible. If for any reason the foal looks like it's not responsive or not breathing, you need to institute CPR right away, and you need to contact your veterinarian. So those are reasons to get involved, but again, the general idea is don't get too involved early on. Give them a chance to do their thing. Now, again, back to the 1, 2, 3. So what do we mean by that? Well, by the end of the first hour, the foal should be standing. If the foal's not standing after 60 minutes, you need to call your veterinarian. By the end of the second hour, the foal needs to have successfully found the teats and began to nurse. By the end of the third hour, the mare should have passed the placenta, and you want to save that placenta. Put it in a feed bucket, put it in a feed bag, put it somewhere it's going to be cool if it is a warm day, and save that for the veterinarian to examine whenever the foal exam takes place later on that day or the following day. Now, in terms of the milk, make sure that the mare has produced her colostrum. You can see that by it being a thick, yellowy milk whenever you squeeze on the teat. For those of you that have a Brix refractometer, again, is another thing you can order from ARS. And that is a very simple wine and alcohol tool that winemakers use. And you just put a drop of fluid on it. In this case, we're going to be putting a drop of milk. You can hold that up to the light, look through that refractometer, and it'll tell you if the colostrum quality is good. Now, if the colostrum quality is not good, that is another reason you're going to immediately call your veterinarian so that we can tube that foal with some colostrum. A lot of times mares just don't make good colostrum, or in some situations, they will actually make good colostrum and you'll see the mare leak. If the mare is leaking before foaling, meaning the teats are just running milk prior to foaling, then you need to be making arrangements to get another source of colostrum for that foal before it's born. The mare only makes one batch of colostrum. It's not something she's going to continuously make. So it's stored very close to foaling, and it should not leak. If it leaks, it's all gone, and you're going to have just milk going in there, and that milk's not going to do the same thing as colostrum. So what is colostrum? Colostrum is that first drink that contains all these antibodies that this foal has never been exposed to. So that mare's immune system concentrates antibodies, which are immune complexes that have been programmed to intercept things like bacteria and viruses, and it passes those through the milk into the intestinal tract of the foal. That intestine actually allows those large immune complexes to be absorbed into the bloodstream, and then those antibodies circulate through the foal's bloodstream just like it had made its own antibodies. So really a unique thing. Now that happens in humans in the womb. So we still have colostrum, but that's not as important because those antibodies are able to cross across the placenta into our baby's bloodstreams before they're born. It's different in livestock. In livestock, there's no transfer of the antibodies across the placenta, and all that has to occur with the actual colostrum. So paramount that they get good colostrum and they get it early. They can only absorb it for about 12 hours. After that, the gut begins to close down its ability to absorb those things. That's a natural defense mechanism. It doesn't want to keep all the doors open because bad guys can come in. And once that window is closed after 12 hours, you can't get any antibodies in through that route, and that's where we have to do things like give a plasma transfusion through an intravenous catheter. So let's talk about at the end of that 12 to 24 hour period, the foal should have stood, should have sucked, the mare should have passed your placenta, you will have saved that, and then you will have arranged your veterinarian to come out and to do a neonatal exam and to examine the mare somewhere between 12 and 24 hours. Ideally, that's going to be at about 18 hours of age. That way, you're going to have the maximum colostrum absorption, and your veterinarian is actually going to do a blood test called an IgG test, and where they're going to confirm that the foal did indeed get the colostrum. If it didn't, again, they're going to be able to give it an IV with a plasma treatment, and that's going to raise those antibody levels to a safe level. If we don't do that, then the foal's going to succumb to a very serious infection, and almost without a doubt, that foal's going to develop arthritis, a septic arthritis, which is called joint ill, and that is very, very difficult to treat and is definitely related to performance problems later on as an athlete. So we want to avoid all that. So we're going to have the veterinarian come out, they're going to run an IgG test, they're going to do an examination on the foal, make sure that the foal doesn't have any birth defects, make sure that it doesn't have any congenital defects related to its conformation, make sure that heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature, everything are normal, the umbilicus is okay, and we're also going to check that mare. Now mares can oftentimes have their own set of problems, and so your veterinarian will take a detailed look at that mare to make sure that the birthing process didn't cause any problems to herself, either through the outside of a reproductive tract where they can sometimes tear, or on the inside as well, they can develop problems. So very important that you get that examination scheduled. Don't skip that for any reason, and make sure it occurs sometime between 12 and 24 hours of age. Now we need to think about what are the risk factors for this foal and what sort of problems do we need to try to head off before they occur. Again, the most life-threatening thing that foals can develop in that first week of life is a systemic infection that enters through the intestinal tract. For a long time, we thought that microbes or bad bacteria reached the foal through the umbilicus. It really turns out that all those microbes are coming in through the oral, or through the mouth, and they invade through the intestinal tract. So if you think about a foal, the foal is nursing, and they're nursing in a barn environment, right? And oftentimes they don't just go straight to a clean teat. They go and they nurse the mare's leg. They may be nursing the stall walls. They may be nursing on any inanimate object in there. They're looking to find that teat. While they're doing that, they're picking up bacteria. Now, if you think about what's actually occurring in the foal's intestinal tract, is that intestinal tract doesn't have any bacteria. It is a sterile environment. And one day it'll have a fully formed microbiome of trillions of microbes that are going to be there to help the foal digest things like hay. But at this point, the foal doesn't have any of that. So it is literally a blank petri dish. If you remember the petri dishes that you had in biology class in high school that you would inoculate with bacteria and they would grow bacteria, you can think about the foal's GI tract being the exact same thing. It is a petri dish. It's ready to grow things. It's looking for friendly bacteria to inhabit it, but it's also open to bad guys. And when those bad guys come in, and I'm talking about things like Salmonella, E. coli, Clostridium, even some viruses such as rotavirus, when those things come in and they're unopposed, they can wreak havoc and they cause a systemic infection on the foal that makes the foal get very, very sick. The foal will oftentimes display signs of diarrhea in the first couple of days of life. Now, this is very different than foal heat diarrhea. Foal heat diarrhea typically takes place between 7 and 12 days after foaling. That is a normal process. It's a normal period where the foal's microbiome is starting to take place, establish itself. There's things going on with the mare related to her hormone system. There may be some changes in her milk quality, but that's a whole different thing, but it is normal and it takes place 7 to 12 days after birth. What we're talking about here is severe neonatal diarrhea, and that occurs typically in 2 to 7 days after birth, and it results in massive, massive disease because the foal not only has diarrhea and has infection in its intestinal tract, that infection begins to go systemic, and we call that a septic foal. Now bacteria are floating around in the bloodstream and they are wreaking havoc. All the foal's immune system is just trying to ramp up. Remember, it doesn't have a real strong immune system because it uses the mare's colostrum, but it does have an immune system and it's doing everything it can to fight off this infection. But this infection will cause a low blood pressure, oftentimes a low body temperature. You may see a fever, but oftentimes it's low. The foal will get sluggish. It won't want to nurse. It may not want to rise. And then it begins to become comatose. Joints can get infected again from this whole situation. And if intensive care is not implemented, then the foal will succumb to this disease. So early signs that you're looking for in a normal foal is you're going to see a foal that nurses, it'll play around for a little bit, it'll urinate a very large amount of clear urine. That indicates it's getting plenty to drink. You shouldn't see small amounts of urine. You shouldn't see dark urine. You shouldn't see it straining to urinate. You should see the foal simply passing large volumes of clear urine. You should see it play, and then you should see it lay down. And it'll sleep for a while, and then that process just repeats over and over again. Stand up, play a little bit, nurse, pee, maybe defecate, and then lay down and sleep some more. Now, if you're seeing a foal that is just standing under the mare and perhaps its ears have gone flat, maybe the mare's letting milk down that's just streaming on the foal's face and it gets a big sticky forehead on it, and it's just sort of goes up, hits the bag and doesn't latch on, and just sort of sleeping, standing up, that is a sign that you have something going on. You need to get a veterinarian out there, and do not delay. Don't set up an appointment for 2 days later. Set up an appointment for that day, even if it's after hours. These things are time sensitive and critical that you get them taken care of. Other things you may see, we talked about diarrhea. You may see a swollen joint or lameness occurred. Don't ever assume that's just the mare just stepped on the foal or something like that. Anytime you see a foal under 30 days of age with a swollen joint or lameness, that is very, very serious and indicates a systemic infection has taken place. You need to have that foal evaluated. So those are normal things that we should see with a foal. Those are abnormal things that you might see with a foal that would indicate that you need to have the foal checked out in more detail. After that 7-day window goes by, then there's a good chance that that foal's not going to succumb to any of those neonatal infections. So realize this first week of life is just so important that you get these basic things done and that the foal gets off to a good start. Okay, we've talked about the fact that the foal is going to nurse, the fact that the foal is going to have lots and lots of very dilute, clear urine that's going to pass. Also, remember in that first day, that foal is going to pass something called meconium. Meconium is that really dark, hard balls of manure that develop while the foal is actually in the womb. And this is just a byproduct of all the metabolic waste and cellular waste that the foal accumulates in 11 months of gestation, and it's just stored up as that first pile of manure. Now, that normally is passed without a problem, but you'll see some, especially colts, will develop some problems where that manure is so hard and perhaps it's bigger than the pelvic canal is, that it gets hung up in there and they'll strain to defecate. You may think that they're straining to urinate. It's normally they're straining to defecate. They'll be posturing. Even colts may have their penis hanging out, and so you're thinking, oh, there's something wrong with the bladder. It is typically related to them trying to pass this meconium. You can certainly administer an over-the-counter fleet enema to the foal. That's not a problem, but I would encourage you to at least touch bases with your veterinarian to let them know that you are dealing with this situation, and they may recommend that you administer an enema, but you always want to include them, because while most of the foals pass this meconium, sometimes it can really be stuck in there and require some more advanced levels of care from your veterinarian for that to pass. In worst case scenarios, sometimes we even have to take those foals to surgery. So you don't want to get behind. If the foal is struggling to pass that meconium, it can sometimes get away from its normal nursing cycle. That can lead to dehydration, and dehydration compounds that whole problem of that meconium being stuck. So don't let that occur. Stay on top of the meconium. Okay, we've discussed what needs to occur for a foal to get off to a healthy start. Now, I want to give you a solution to making sure that that first week of life goes as smoothly as possible. We've talked about the mare needs to foal at a certain time, and certain things need to happen after she foals. And the best way to make sure that happens is to actually attend the foaling. And how do you do that? Many of you have sat up night after night waiting for the mare to foal, only to get so tired that you can't make another night, and lo and behold, that's the night that she goes. So in order to focus your energy, we've developed these foaling strips that are very simple to read. So All you need to do is take out the strips, you apply a drop of milk, you look for a color change, and the color change will tell you when that mare is going to foal. So very simple way to focus your energy on making sure you're there for the foal. Now the next thing that we talked about is making sure that foal gets a good dose of colostrum, and that needs to happen in the first 12 hours of life. Now some foals are a little bit slower than others to make that happen. While many will just jump up and they'll be right on the udder within 30 minutes of being born, some of them are slower to start, and while I said up to 2 hours for them to nurse, that really should occur earlier, but anything after 2 hours is abnormal. So even if they're on schedule and they nurse within 2 hours, they may have encountered some bacteria or viruses in the environment that can challenge their immune system that we need to try to head off. And so how do we do that? Well, we use a product called the Foal Kickstart. Foal Kickstart is a concentrated source of antibodies or immunoglobulins that are there to bind certain pathogens. Pathogens are bacteria and viruses that cause disease. So we're looking to fill that intestinal tract where those microbes are going to enter. We look to fill that with a healthy dose of these immunoglobulins to intercept the pathogens before they cause disease. Now this is not a colostrum replacement. We're not trying to do the same thing by getting the antibodies into the bloodstream and use this passive transfer of immunity that we're after with colostrum. So make no mistake, it's not in lieu of colostrum. It is in addition to colostrum, because that colostrum may not be consumed in a timely time period. And we may find out that at the neonatal exam that lo and behold the mare's colostrum was not as rich as it should have been, and the foal didn't get enough of the antibodies, and so that foal could be 18 hours of age and it's living there with an unprotected GI tract and immune system. So we provide it with these antibodies. So the Foal Kickstart goes in a half a tube at the time of birth, another good reason to be there for the birth. And then we'll back off, we'll let the mare in the foal do its thing, and at 6 hours of age, we'll come back and we'll give them the other half. And again, that's just gonna line that entire intestinal tract with these antibodies that are designed to intercept the bad bacteria and viruses that may be in the environment and the foal may have picked up. Okay, so that's day one. So we've known when the mare was gonna foal. Now we provided the Foal Kickstart to make sure that we get the antibodies in the intestinal tract. The other part is providing probiotics and prebiotics to the foal to allow it to naturally build up its own microbiome. We keep using this word microbiome. That is related to the whole mix of bacteria, fungus, and virus that are going to be living in the intestinal tract. Remember, that's going to start off with zero, a sterile blank slate. And the way I like to think about this is that the intestinal tract is like a main street in a small town. It's full of stores, and stores have windows and they have nice things that people want inside those windows. And normally nothing happens whenever there's a lot of normal people walking up and down. You've got your police, you've got your mailmen, you've got just your normal city folk walking up and down this main street. That they provide sort of a normal semblance of preventing looting and rioting, right? Well, if all those people go away and you still have those nice fancy storefronts and nobody's on the streets, and then what happens? The burglars and the bad guys come out and they do the looting and rioting. The same thing happens in the foal's intestinal tract. If you don't have any of these healthy microbes to provide that competitive advantage and that warding off the bad guys by occupying that space and reporting and signaling to the immune system that there's someone bad here, if you don't have that there, then those burglars or the pathogens, the bacteria, the viruses, they make their way into the storefronts, into the windows, and they begin loitering and then ultimately rioting and looting and doing no good. And that translates into the diarrhea, into the sepsis or the systemic infection that the foals get. So how do we prevent that? We want to put those healthy microbes in there, and we do that with the administration of research strains of probiotics. In this case, we use two particular strains. One is a bacteria strain called Lactobacillus reuteri, and the other is a yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii. So we use these two strains to line the intestinal tract to make sure that we've got those healthy microbes in there. And then we use prebiotics. Prebiotics are basically fertilizer for the healthy microbes. So they allow the expansion of normal healthy microbes. You may even watch a foal go in and nibble on its mother's manure. You may see a big big pile of manure there and the foal going straight to it and consuming fecal balls, and you think, oh, quit doing that, that's nasty. Well, that foal is trying to do the same thing. It's trying to pick up those microbes and it's trying to line its intestinal tract to get those healthy microbes so it can ward off the bad guys and it can actually digest its food better. So it gets it from the mare. We're giving that in advance, so we're trying to provide that in advance, and then the prebiotics are going to allow the naturally consumed ones to, again, expand and grow. So prebiotics and probiotics are crucial during the first week, and we do that from days 2 through 7, and we give a half a tube of our full probiotics. So on day 1, you've given a half a tube of the Kickstart at birth, a half a tube at 6 hours. On day 2, in the morning, a half a tube of the full probiotic, a half a tube in the evening, and the same goes through days 3 through 7. And at the end of day 7, hopefully you've got a great foal, a healthy foal, one that is ready with its immune system to fight off disease challenges, and one that is ready also to go out, thrive, and make those dreams come true of that amazing foal that you've been anticipating for so long. So this is a great application for both commercial breeders and for backyard hobbyists. A lot of our commercial breeders will actually buy a foal kit and just put the mare's name on it. And so as soon as that foal is born, that directly goes into that foal's regimen. And then a backyard breeder, it's a great thing. You don't have to be a commercial breeder. You don't have to have $1 million foal that's coming out. Any foal is worthy of trying to get it off to its best first week. And by doing the full kit, you're doing what you can to prevent and ward off any disease or infections. So while you're enjoying the exciting time of having a new foal, remember how important it is to ensure your foal develops a healthy microbiome. The more you can do to help your foal's microbiome, the stronger their digestive tract and immune system will be. Don't forget, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more exclusive content on helping your horse and foal be and perform their best year-round. Also check out FullBucketHealth.com, and remember, we're the leaders of digestive care supplements for horses and pets and have been trusted by over 5,000 horse owners and veterinarians to help their horses get back on track.